everyone. So today I will talk about something that's pretty much in the media these days, and this is racism. And I will basically share with you my experience with racism and my experience in the equestrian world as well. So today we'll talk about racism. I live in Canada, I am not in the States, and I'll just basically share with you what my experience with racism is in general, and basically what I think the equestrian or equine industry should work on or improve in reaching basically not necessarily black people but all colored equestrians. I think it's definitely a place where people should feel welcome if they love and genuinely love the sport, loves the horses. I don't see anything wrong with anybody to try and try their best and just basically give them a shot, and see what they're worth. If they can make it, I think it's definitely something that's worth it. So let's just talk a bit about my history with racism. So I am basically, my dad is from the Caribbean and my mom is from Quebec, province here in Canada, and that explained my French accent. So I am basically French. My dad is from the French Caribbean islands and my mom is French Canadian, so that makes me pretty much French and Canadian. I was born in Quebec myself. I was born in the South Shore of Montreal, the countryside, if you will. So that's basically where I'm born, and that's not necessarily where I lived most of my life. I did spend some of my childhood there, and I returned when I was a teenager, basically. And then in between, I lived in Europe, and basically I'll just tell you about, my experience overall with racism. So let's start from the beginning. So my mom and my dad are separated. They were separated since I was pretty much I think a year old or something like that. I do have a sister as well that is mixed like me, although we don't look exactly the same because all mixed children tend to look a little bit different. And so yeah, I was born in the South Shore of Montreal. It's very, well, let's just say it's pretty much white. There's not a lot of colored people, and there's definitely wasn't in the 90s when I was born, so I was pretty much a novelty over there. The immigration in Quebec at that time was pretty limited. There was not that many immigrants, if you will, or different cultures. It was pretty much regular Quebec culture over there. And so yes, I was definitely a victim of racism, and it started probably when I was 4 years old. So before you're 4 years old, I would say it's pretty rare that kids will basically mention that you have something different or that you are different, but you're not immune to adults criticizing basically your color or showing signs of either incomprehension or racism. So that happened basically. My mom is white. She's the one that basically raised me and my sister for most of our lives, and so for her to be a white person with two darker skinned children is already hard enough, but we had to live with a lot of comments, and as early as basically since I was born, she wasn't really shielding me from it or anything like that. I mean, it was part of her life. When you are mixed or when you are different, whatever your difference might be, obviously it's pretty obvious that people or tend to basically put it in your face as something that would be not necessarily positive all the time. Some people do say I love the skin, and they dream, they just they would like to have the same skin color as me, but on the daily is definitely a hard burden to carry as well. So I experienced my first basically I think experience with racism is when I was 4. And I started basically kindergarten. I remember actually having a lot of kids asking me if I was adopted and pointing me, with their finger and saying that I was different. But as a kid, you don't really see things that way. You don't think it's racism. You just, you're just thinking you're different, and that basically led me to not really be proud of myself, you know, not being really confident about myself and being really assertive. I was really shy as well when I was a kid. Just, I don't know if it's the difference or just basically my personality, but it was basically really hard. You know, every day you get kids that just, you know, mock you, whatever. Would it be for your eye color or your hair color or your skin color? It just is what it is. So it started at 4, and then when I started kindergarten, that's when you get the first, you know, kids pointing fingers as you're different, especially because you're the only one. And I was basically, I'm the oldest of my sister is younger, so maybe, you know, it was a bit easier for her, but because I was older, I was definitely the first one to go to school, first one to go to kindergarten, and so I had to go and break the ice basically, right? So I was the, like, you know, different kid, obviously, in the whole group, like, you know, standing out like a sore thumb basically. Or the black sheep, right? So yeah, so I had a bit of experience then school started, and I moved to Europe, and in Europe I didn't really experience as much racism. It was actually way more open. I don't think I even had anybody questioning, you know, my color or just pointing fingers or anything like that. It was definitely something that was actually a bit more open as a, you know, as a community or as a group. I did actually have a mix. I think she was, a mixed kid as well in my class when I was in Europe. And kids were not pointing fingers. I had also darker complexion kids in my class as well, and in elementary school. Never had an issue with them. We were not pointing it, not saying that he was the dark kid or anything like that. There was actually no issues whatsoever. So when I returned to Canada, I was a teenager and I had to face racism again. Because we moved basically in the same part of Quebec, and it was really hard for me to make friends and just engage with people. Obviously, I'm always, you know, a bit more shy, a bit more reserved, just because I know I'm different. You know, it's something that, you know, you have ingrained after a while, when a lot of people, you know, criticize you for whatever it is, your physique, your appearance. It's something that gets ingrained in your brain, and you're not going to be the one that's going to be jumping in front of people and be like, hey, I'm the different one, how are you, can I be your friend, you know, type of thing. So I was definitely more reserved, and even till this day I'm not as reserved anymore, but even till this day it's definitely something that, you know, preoccupies me. You know, when you get your first boyfriend, you know, is the family going to be accepting you, are you going to be rejected? You know, you get like so much rejection that sometimes it's really hard to be like the one that's always like, yay, you know, let's do things. You know, you're a bit more like, okay, we'll just go with the flow, right? If people are nice, then that's great, you know, but I never, you know, make a big deal out of it or anything. So once I returned, I actually met the kid that I used to see in prior to elementary, or pre-K if you will, and they basically grew up and they were the same. Basically, they were as racist as they were as kids. Their view didn't really change, and I guess without having me in the picture, there was basically no darker skin or complexion kids whatsoever in my school. I think with the exception of one, and she was adopted. So then he's like, are you adopted? You know, that's the question you get a lot, and I think I spent like literally 3/4 of my life wishing that I was adopted, because it would make it so much easier on me. And I think on my mom as well, just because it wasn't something that, you know, people would do. Like, white people don't hang out with black people and things like that. So, you know, it was pretty much, I guess, brave of my mom also to be able to, you know, raise 2 kids in that kind of environment. It was definitely not the easiest. In high school as well, I remember experiencing racism when it comes to your school grades or performance as well. So, you know, being the different one and an overachiever, I was definitely like working hard to get the grades as high as possible, so I can actually stand out, be, you know, like feel like reassured that I'm actually doing something, you know, for myself. You know, people always put down black people as they're like, you know, people that won't succeed in life, that don't have a lot of chances and things like that. And so for me, it was really important to work hard and make sure that I have the highest grade, you know. And I actually ended up experiencing racism from my high school principal basically, which made me unable to receive any rewards or prizes for being, having a good average and things like that. So that was definitely something that was really hard, just because I knew that I worked hard and that my grades were good, so that was definitely something hard that I had to experience. But honestly, overall, I would say, racism made me better, because I push myself every day just to prove people that they're wrong, all the time. And that makes you definitely stronger as a person, just because you know that, if you do everything right and you play by the books and you actually show, that you can do it, people will start eventually, letting you in basically their world, and just you don't become actually the black person, you just become yourself. You're actually recognized and people know who you are. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It just makes you actually a person, rather than just a person of color, I guess. So yeah, that was, I think, the hardest thing I had to deal with is high school, just because every year I was like, okay, if I get my average higher and higher every year, maybe eventually I'll get recognized and I'll have the prizes I'm supposed to receive. So yeah, that definitely contributed as making me like a perfectionist and an overachiever overall. So now when it comes to like university, it was still like I moved basically to Ottawa, which is a bigger city, and I still experienced a bit of racism, but definitely low level. And I was also older, like I was in my 18, 19, 20, something like that. So I was definitely older, so it was actually a bit easier for me. Once again, I was never the person that was always like, crazy and just like, really forward or whatever. I was pretty reserved, really studying really hard. I wasn't looking to do to make anybody proud or just anything. I was just basically looking for myself and trying to have the highest grade as I can, just because I know the world out there is pretty hard. And it's pretty hard also for people of color. I know it's hard for a lot of people, but definitely if you are a female and you are actually of color, it definitely either helps you or doesn't, right? So if you work for the government or if you work for certain places, they definitely make a bit more room for ladies and also people of color. So that's something that if you choose to identify to, you can definitely have a better chance of employment. But as a person I am, I would never basically check the mark that I am a minority and that I am a woman, just because I don't want to have a position or a job just because I am a woman or I am a person of color. I don't think that's something that's fair, and that's something that you should mention if you're going to a job interview. And that's my personal opinion. That's something I would never check for those boxes. I just want to be, if I have to be against other people, I'd rather not be the one that's labeled. I just want to be like anybody else, and I think that's what most people want. Would it be people of color or people, in a wheelchair, whatever the situation is? I think they just want to be treated as everybody else. We don't want to have a special treatment, and we don't want to have the discrimination as well. So it's one or the other, but we don't want to necessarily like stand out. And that's why you won't see me go in the streets and just go to do this whole like protest or whatever, just because I don't think that we should make us think about black people being treated differently, although the case was pretty severe, and I understand that it's definitely something that's really sad. But at the same time, I think people just want to be treated as people, no matter what their color or anything that might be different about them. I never go ahead and just point people and be like, oh, that's this person or that person. I just rather just be labeled as my name, and then people can get to know me. So like I said, I was moving to Ottawa, and it was actually a bit easier. I had a bit of racism, but it was like pretty minor. Since it's a campus, there's a lot of students, you can hang out with whoever you want, and it's just better, easier that way. So for my experience with racism in the equine industry, I did have actually people stare at me quite a lot when they either visit the barn, or they either think that I work for the facility, which is kind of pretty sad. I mean, not that it's bad, but I'm an owner. I love my horse. I ride horses. I don't think I should be labeled as a helper or whatever, somebody that doesn't know what horses do or ride or anything like that. I don't think we should be prejudiced for that. But yeah, it happened often. People ask me directions to the washrooms, things like that, or clean their horse's stall, or do you know when my horse's stall was clean? Things like these kind of questions happen to me a few times. But usually the usual people that are owners or part owners or riders, I didn't really get a lot of racism from them. They were actually pretty good. It's definitely getting better. I see a lot of more basically diversity. I don't know if it's because I moved to the GTA now, which is definitely way more diverse. You have all kinds of people here, all races or religion or whatever, and there's some that just ride, so I'm really happy to see a little bit of diversity in this particular sport. I know a lot of people think it's like a white privileged sport, but I don't think it is really. I think if you put your heart to it, I think you can definitely make it and make your own mark in that sport. It definitely, I think there is a money aspect that might be challenging for some people to actually be able to ride. I'm not discriminating anybody or any race in particular, but I know that if you don't have the budget, it might be something that's really hard to get into because the lessons are not cheap, and yeah, it's just if you have to buy yourself a horse because you're really great or you want to have one, it's something else as well. But yeah, it's definitely something that I don't know, I would hope that maybe we can have some incentive that eventually would be carried or given to some people just that are maybe not able to afford it, and that's all colors included, genders or whatever. It's just if we can have like a program that would actually reach out to these communities and be like, hey kids, do you want to learn how to ride? Is something that interests you? You never know, right? You can find the next Olympian that's living their hardest life right now and just being a child in, let's say, in a big city or even in a countryside, that just could really use a friend, and usually horses are great for that. So I'm all for definitely just reaching out to people. Sometimes they can't reach out themselves, and it's also really great to reach out to them and just be like, hey, would you be interested? Because that's something I would totally do. Like, I am definitely thinking that the horse world or the equestrian world is pretty much in danger at this point, just because it's getting to the point where it's pretty elitist and I guess expensive, and people can't carry on with that. So I find there's less equestrians now than it used to be, and that's something that definitely I find scary a bit. So I don't want the sport to disappear. I'm definitely all for this field of sport. I think it's a great sport. I think a lot of people I think everyone can learn something from riding a horse, even if it's once, twice, I don't know. I just think it's definitely something that's worth keeping and keeping alive for sure. So that's definitely my goal. Eventually, one day, one of my dreams is basically to open my own facility and be able to actually reach out to those people that are in need and just ask them if their kid wants to learn how to ride after school for free. That would be my dream basically. If I win the lottery, that's probably what I would do, is open a facility and just make sure that everybody can ride and try it if they want to. So yeah, I was actually fortunate enough that because of the bullying that I was experiencing in elementary school, it made my life a little bit hard and miserable, and I got the opportunity to actually go ride at the local horse center, which happens to be one of the international showing facility, and I had 10 lessons offered to me, and that definitely changed my whole life. So we were actually definitely in a bad situation financially. Like, my mom is a single mom, so she has to work hard to actually afford everything. And I definitely am the kid that loves animals, so that just I think changed my whole life. Being offered those tennis lessons basically made me have a horse and want to do this for the rest of my life, basically. And I think that's something that I want to recreate definitely for as many kids as I can, basically. Yeah, sorry. It was a great it was a great experience. I'm just getting emotional just thinking about it, just because it did literally change my life. So thank you so much for the person that agreed to do this for me, because now I am here 20 years later and I'm really happy where I'm at, and I can do the sport that I want. And for people that just wanted to help, they actually definitely did. They gave me a dream and a focus, and that's what I've been doing, or trying my best to do in the last few years. Is just not hold on to that dream and just do my best. So yeah, that's definitely what I think about the horse industry in general. Just be a bit more open. I know a lot of people are really, really great. Actually, it's a community. Once you're in, it's a community that's awesome. That's gonna help you so much for so many things, actually. They're really helpful. They're always ready to help one another. And at some point, like, if they are racist, which I find there's a few, they're definitely willing to show you whatever you want to learn, and always push you to do your best and be your best. And the horse will do the same thing for you as well. So I think that's definitely, once you're in and you know exactly, a few people in the actual field, you will discover that it's actually an inclusive sport. There's people that are in wheelchair that do horseback riding. There are people of all kinds of different colors that do horseback riding, and nobody's judging that. They're all supporting it just because the sport is just an amazing sport. They don't really make a difference. We actually compete, girls and boys, and black and white, and all together. I think the only ones that are competing separately are people that are basically doing the Paralympics. So people that are in wheelchairs are usually judged with one another. But other than that, it's all inclusive. There's no issues with that, and I don't think there's an objection of somebody being having basically a disability and wanting to show with people that don't. I don't think there's a problem with that. So that's definitely something that's great about that sport, and why I like it actually so much. I find that once you get in, you actually find that it's like your home. Like, I don't think I could do anything else other than that. Like, obviously I have a passion for the horse, I have a passion for the sport, but also if you're not supported by the community, that's something that could be really, really hard. And although I'm not like the richest girl in the whole wide world, I still have a place, and I can still voice myself and perform and do whatever I want. I'm not limited, so that's great for that. Yeah, so that's basically a few tidbits of my experience as an equestrian, and also as a person of color, just here in Canada. Definitely, I would find the countryside is really, really hard. It's definitely a place that you would maybe encounter more racism just because of their rarity. You're just a rare, breed, I guess, over there. So now that I moved to the GTA, basically, I'm not saying that I like it better, but I'm just saying that it feels weird just because people don't really make like a difference. They just, people are, in the GTA, they're coming from all different countries and all over the world. So for them, it's just like they're just asking you, hey, where are you from? What nationality do you have, and things like that. I don't find this racist. It does bother me a bit just because I don't think I have to explain where I come from if I don't want to. It's just people keep on asking you, where are you from, where are you from, where are you from? And when you say you're from Canada, then people are just like, yeah, seriously, where are you from? where your parents from. Like, it's just, I don't know, I don't think I have to explain myself where I come from. Usually I just like to say that I'm Canadian and carry on with conversation, just because I don't really like people making a difference, whatever that is. It's just basically by notifying that I am different, therefore I must be coming from somewhere else, right? So yeah, that's something that kind of ticks me off. But other than that, I mean, it's fine. It's something I would talk about if people ask me to. I'd just rather not be made distinction of. I don't want people to just, I don't know, like, point me out for any reason other than, I don't know, like, other than being like a good performer or something that's a more positive light. Like, I don't want to be differentiated just because, I don't know, I look different. That's definitely, I don't know, something I don't like. But one thing that I can say is basically that everybody's story is different. Everybody maybe experienced discrimination, at one point in their lives, and everybody's story is different. So I'm not gonna be judging everybody's racism stories or whatever like that, just because none of our stories are similar. And that's also why I don't think it's appropriate for people to just label people as like, oh, okay, you're mixed, you're a mixed person, therefore you should have the same background as so and so and the same story as so and so. Like, obviously, I would say everybody is different, and I respect everybody being the way they are. Like, I usually use the name of the person and just refer to them by their name and just try to learn and know who the person is. So like that is just a bit different. If they want to tell you, hey, you know what, I'm from this place or that place, then let them be. That's what they wanted to, that's what they want to say. But usually I just like to be respected. If I can join a conversation and just engage in a conversation without being asked where I come from, then that's definitely a plus for me. Like, I love just not being, the weird one or the different one or anything like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Everybody's different. Everybody has, their own story. I think my sister's story might be different just because she didn't have to break the ice. Usually I was always a year ahead, and so like hopefully her story was a bit easier than mine. But I think, yeah, like I said, everybody experienced, I think, discrimination at one point or another in their lives. Would it be for their gender, their sex? Basically, you can't participate in certain sport because you're a girl, you're a boy, whatever it is. I think there's definitely a lot of stories out there. But yeah, so that's my take on it. Please be kind to one another. It doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what color you are. A lot of things don't matter. You just have to focus. If you want to learn about, if you want to get to know someone, just start by not judging them at first and just let them be themselves. You'll be probably amazed to see what kind of person you can meet by just letting them be who they want to be and do what they want to do. So yeah, like, that's definitely something that you can't really put enough emphasis on, definitely. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a bit long, and I was a bit emotional at time. It definitely is something that kind of touches you, I guess, or put an imprint on you for your whole life. If people say comments or act a certain way, or it definitely is something that's gonna hurt someone else. So sometimes just think about the things you say, things like that. I'm not saying be overly conscious. Obviously, I still have a great sense of humor, but there's some things that definitely are a bit different for me, I guess, that it makes me a bit more sensitive to certain subject. But I just really wanted to make a point and mentioning this, just because I don't want to silence the fact that there are awesome people of color, equestrians out there that definitely deserve to be known and encouraged. It's definitely a field that will help you if you are able to get in. But encouragement is definitely the key. Like, instead of pointing fingers, just at least give them something to hold on to. Just give them like, make them feel welcome, recognize them, you know, not necessarily just because they are a different color, just, you know, make sure that they are not discriminated against, that they have a fair chance at whatever they're doing. And if they succeed, then just be right there behind them, because they do need to be encouraged, they do need to be loved as much as everybody else. And I don't think that there's a lot of room for hate in this world. We all know there's a lot of things that, you know, we have no control over. And I think hate is definitely something that, you know, shouldn't exist. Just for you, for your kids, for your grandkids, for everybody. I think there's not a lot of people that are like, yeah, I love discrimination. You know, everybody's against it most of the time. And I don't know. I don't think I've seen everybody that was for discrimination, but I just think that discrimination overall is something that has to kind of fade away. And I think it should be replaced by encouragement and a lot of love. So I'm putting a lot of love out there. If you are if you feel like you're a different kind of equestrian, if you feel like, you know, people put you aside at some point in your life, I don't mind, just share it with me if you want. I'm interested in hearing other stories. Yeah, it's definitely something that I think is worth reading. If you have any stories, just share them with me in the comments down below. I am definitely interested in getting to know you, whatever the color you might be and whatever background you might have. A story is a story, and I think it's worth reading or seeing. So I give you lots of love, and if you're a mixed skin equestrian like me, well, kudos.